El Clasico didn't begin as a football match. It began as a collision between identities, power, and history. And long before packed stadiums or global broadcasts, before the Bernabeu existed, and decades before Camp Nou rose from the ground, Spain was already a country divided. In 1899, Barcelona was a city bursting with cultural pride and political tension. And when Swiss businessman Joan Gamper helped create FC Barcelona, the club quickly became more than sport, a symbol of Catalan identity and local pride. While in 1902, in the capital city of Madrid, another club was born, Madrid Football Club, representing a different vision of Spain, centralized, ambitious, tied to the heart of the nation. When the two sides met for the first time that same year, it was just football, but the symbolism was already powerful. Barcelona defeating Madrid and igniting a rivalry that would grow alongside Spain's own political fractures. As the years passed, matches became more intense, crowds more passionate, and by the early 20th century, newspapers described the clashes as battles of pride rather than games, because Spain itself was changing. Monarchies fell, republics rose, regional identities grew stronger, and football stadiums slowly became places where politics and emotion mixed with sport. In the 1930s, Spain descended into chaos as the Civil War erupted, a conflict that tore families apart and left deep scars across the country, and football could not escape the storm. Barcelona president Josep Sunyol, a political figure and outspoken supporter of Catalan autonomy, was executed by Francoist forces in 1936, a tragedy that transformed him into a symbol of resistance for the club and its supporters. When General Francisco Franco emerged victorious in 1939, Spain entered decades of dictatorship, and regional identities like Catalonia's were heavily suppressed. Language restrictions, cultural limitations, and political control reshaped everyday life. And within this environment, football became one of the few spaces where identity could still be expressed, even indirectly. Barcelona came to represent, in the eyes of many supporters, a cultural refuge, while Real Madrid increasingly became associated, fairly or not, with the image of the central state, an association historians still debate today. Through the 1940s and 1950s, El Clasico evolved from rivalry into mythology, fueled by stories, rumors, and moments that still divide fans generations later. None more controversial than the 1943 Copa del Generalissimo semi-final, where Barcelona won the first leg 3-0, but lost the return match in Madrid 11-1. A result that remains one of the most debated in football history, surrounded by accusations of intimidation and political pressure that have never been fully proven, yet never forgotten. Whether myth or reality, the match became part of El Clasico's legend, deepening mistrust between both fan bases and turning every future meeting into a symbolic confrontation. As Real Madrid rose to dominance in Europe during the 1950s with legends like Alfredo Di Stefano and Ferenc Puskás, winning 5 consecutive European Cups, the club became a global symbol of success, and Franco's regime used sporting victories as international propaganda, which further reinforced the perception among many Barcelona supporters that football success reflected political power. Meanwhile, Barcelona fans increasingly embraced the phrase "Més que un club," more than a club, seeing their team as a representation of identity rather than just competition. Camp Nou, opened in 1957, became a gathering place where culture and sport merged, where chants and flags carried meaning beyond football, even under the watchful eyes of authorities. By the 1960s and 70s, El Clasico matches were emotional powder kegs, hostile atmospheres, fierce tackles, and crowds charged with historical memory. And even foreign stars entering the rivalry could feel the weight of history pressing down on every pass and challenge. When Franco died in 1975 and Spain transitioned to democracy, many believed the rivalry would cool. But history doesn't disappear overnight. Decades of tension had already shaped identities, and El Clasico carried those memories into a new era. In the 1980s and 90s, the rivalry transformed again, less about dictatorship and more about sporting supremacy. Yet the echoes of the past remained alive in songs, banners, and fan narratives passed from one generation to the next. As football globalized, El Clasico became one of the most watched sporting events on earth. Billions tuning in to witness a match that felt bigger than sport, even if many viewers didn't fully understand why the emotions ran so deep. Then came new eras of storytelling. Figo's controversial move from Barcelona to Madrid, the Galacticos versus La Masia philosophy, Guardiola versus Mourinho, Messi versus Ronaldo, each chapter adding new layers to a rivalry already loaded with history. Yet beneath the modern spectacle lies a deeper truth. El Clasico is not a simple story of heroes and villains, but a mirror reflecting Spain's complex past, its political divisions, cultural struggles, and competing identities. Fans argue endlessly about history, about favoritism, injustice, myths, and memory, because El Clasico isn't just about trophies, it's about how people choose to interpret the past. And that is why the rivalry never truly cools, because every generation inherits a different version of the story, each believing their side carries the truth. Today, when Real Madrid and Barcelona walk onto the pitch, players from across the world wear the shirts, yet the stadium still vibrates with echoes from another century, a reminder that football can carry history long after the events themselves have ended. El Clasico is not simply a match, it is a living narrative, rewritten every season, shaped by victory, controversy, and memory. And maybe that is the real reason it endures, not because it is a war, but because it is a story people refuse to stop telling. And as long as those stories continue, as long as the whistle blows and the world watches, El Clasico will remain more than football, a rivalry where history, identity, and emotion collide, and where the next chapter is always waiting to be written.